Christ is in our midst. So tonight I want to talk to you about something that happened to me at the conference this last week down in Louisville. I was down there. Something strange always happens to me at the conferences. I don't know why. It seems that every year something happens that I'm not expecting, and that is a good thing and a gift. And this year, I go to the conference and I'm in the hotel lobby, and somebody, a complete stranger, comes up to me and says, so-and-so's looking for you. And I said, oh, okay. I said, do I know you? He says, nope. I said, great. Do I know so-and-so? He says, nope. I said, okay, good. I hope they find me. And so then he walked away, and I thought, that was strange. The next day I see him again. He said, oh, did so-and-so ever find you? I said, I don't think so. He said, okay, well, she's been looking for you. I said, all right, it's good. I hope she finds me. So then the next day I see him again, and he's waving. Hey, did she find you yet? I'm like, no, I haven't talked to anybody. He says, okay, well, she's got something for you. And I'm like, this is getting mysterious, right? I said, okay. So then the next day is the final day of the conference, and we have the Divine Liturgy, and which was just phenomenal. I already talked a little bit about that on Sunday, but the liturgy the altar, which is at St. Michael's, is huge. It's about the size of this room, the altar area. And it was packed, wall to wall, with priests and deacons. That's how many were there. It was just absolutely glorious. And so anyway, we finish and I leave the altar and I walk out of the church. And then I see somebody who comes up and said, Father Peter. I said, yes. She said, I've been looking for you. I said, oh, you're the one. And she said, yes. She said, every year I make one beaded icon. It takes me a year to make it. And then I gift it to a church. And she said, I think that this one is supposed to go to All Saints. I said, really? She said, yeah. And she went on to tell me the story of the saints that are depicted in the icon, which is a beautiful story, which is what I'm going to share with you tonight. And the icons depicted are Saints Peter and Fevronia. So she gave us this beautiful icon, and today has been their feast day, so which is just amazing. I love, as the bishop said, when I stop praying, all the coincidences stop happening. So anyway, here we are on this day where we are celebrating their feast, and we have this new beautiful icon of them that we've never had before. So I want to just tell you their story now. Saints Peter and Fevronia. Peter was a prince of Murom, M-U-R-O-M. I'm not sure anybody know how that's pronounced? We'll just call it Murom, and if I'm wrong, somebody will comment on the film. So he was a prince, and he had leprosy. And so nobody could heal him. All of the best physicians, the best physicians that money could buy, nobody could heal him. And he continued to pray about it. And one night he has a dream, after many years of suffering with leprosy. He has a dream that there is a girl who is the daughter of a beekeeper and that she could heal him. And so he sends these men to go find her where she is. And they said, we have this prince, he's got leprosy. He said he had a dream that you could heal him. And she said, yes, I can heal him. And they said, great, come with us to the palace. She said, no, he needs to come out here. And so he was so ill that he could not walk. And so they had to basically carry him out there, get him out to this place, out to this peasant's beekeeping farm. And so he gets there with her, and he's just enamored with her intelligence and her piety and her beauty. He's just enamored with her. And so she begins to treat him, with natural remedies that included something having to do with the honey, and it said the sourdough, that she actually treated him with a sourdough and like the dough, and had him rub it all over himself. Just a fascinating story. Anyway, he's healed. He's healed of his leprosy, and so he wants nothing more than to be married to his beloved Fevronia. And so they get married, and he goes back to Muron, and his brother dies, and he goes to take the throne, and the local, the nobility said, no, you cannot take the throne, you're married to a commoner. So they said to him, you got to choose. You either leave your wife or you leave the throne. He says, well, that's an easy choice. See you later. So they get on a boat and they leave. But he's heartbroken because it's his home. It's all of the people that he knows, his family, his friends. He's leaving everything with his wife. They called it a Russian Romeo and Juliet story, you know. And so he goes, they go off and they start to settle somewhere else. Well, something happens. It says that great misfortune struck Muron. And one person told me that it was that the prince who took the throne there was a total tyrant and was making life miserable for all of the people. Anyway, whatever the turmoil was that was taking place in Muron, they find this Prince Peter and they beg him to come back. They said, please come back. Bring Princess Fevronia with you. Nothing more that we would love than to have you and Fevronia here. And so the two of them, they return and they take the throne and they live out their days there. They're called the Wonderworkers of Muron. And so they lived out their days there, and eventually, we kind of just fast forward to the end of the story, eventually they decided both mutually together that they wanted to join a monastery. So he was going to go to a men's monastery, she was going to go to a woman's monastery. They went and received, this is the strangest and most beautiful ending to this story. They go to their respective monasteries and they ask God that they please be allowed to die on the same day. And they put in their last will, they said, and we want to be buried in the same coffin. And so their prayer was answered. Yeah, you'll take care of that, right, Dave? So their prayer was answered, and they both died on the same day and hour on June 25th, 1228. So they're each put in their respective coffins, and the monastics, they said, it doesn't seem proper to us. I mean, they did become monastics. It doesn't seem proper to us to bury them in the same coffin. So they put two different coffins out. And they put Peter in one and Fevronia in the other. And then they were lying in state in the church. And in the morning, the monastics came in and they were both in the same coffin. And so they were like, we said this wasn't going to, who did this? So they shift them back, and then they go about their whatever, get a meal and come back in the church and they're back in the same coffin. This happened 4 times. 4 times. And so they're like, fine. And so they buried them. Can you imagine? I mean, think about this story. A prince and princess who become a monk and a nun, pray to die on the same day, which they do in the same hour, and then they ask to be buried in the same coffin. Can you imagine walking into a funeral service with these two in the same coffin? It's just such a unique story. In Russia, it's they have a day, it's Saints Peter and Fevronia's Day, which is the equivalent like of our Valentine's Day. They call it, though, the day of family, love, and fidelity, instead of St. Valentine's Day. So anyway, I heard this story, and I thought it was so absolutely beautiful. And they are, by the way, the patron saints of newlyweds. So, what an absolutely beautiful story. So, that is what I have to tell you about this beautiful icon. I'm going to hold it up one more time so people who are at home can see. And this icon will be treasured in the church and available for veneration and prayers. And so we look forward to having them as part of our All Saints family for many, many years to come. Anybody have any questions?
Isn't Valentine's Day, wasn't he also like an early Christian bishop or priest? What's the story of Valentine?
Yeah, so Saint Valentine was, there are a number of different versions of the story, and there are a number of different Saint Valentines. But Saint Valentine was known as a protector of Christian marriage because during a time of persecution in the Roman Empire, where they were trying to prevent Christians from marrying and having children and whatever else, there was just all of this. They were kind of the Romans were hitting Christians from every angle to try to kind of stifle the spread of and proliferation of Christianity. So Saint Valentine would go secretly by night and marry Christian couples, and then eventually got arrested and martyred. So that's one of the versions of the story, but most of the versions that you hear will be similar to that. There's another one that says that that when he was in prison, that the jail keeper's daughter would come and visit him while he was waiting his martyrdom.
He was blind.
She was blind. And you see the layers of the story. It keeps getting better. And so she was blind and had wings. I'm sorry, I was joking. She was blind, so she would come to him. And anyway, they had this friendship, this really beautiful, warm friendship that developed. And then it is said that in his final letter to her, before he went off to his martyrdom, he signed it, love your Valentine or something. And so we get the Valentine's card. So all of these traditions that have developed and these beautiful versions of that story of the Saint Valentine. So Saint Valentine is an Orthodox saint and martyr.
200, 300, somewhere around there?
Yeah, he was in 3rd century. Yep. Mid to late 3rd, I think. Good question. Anybody else? Any questions? Yes, sir.
So we normally hear about salvation through marriage or monasticism.
Yeah.
How many more examples are there of marriage and monasticism?
There are actually a lot, but this is the only one I've ever heard of where they actually ask to be buried together in the same coffin. But there are quite a number of examples where saints would raise their children, and then eventually they would both agree that they wanted to go and join a monastery, and so they would do that. But they didn't do it because they hated each other. They did it because they loved each other, and they wanted to devote themselves more to prayer, for one another, and etc. So that is an Orthodox tradition. This is not the only example of that. There's a lot of those.